Hello, my name is Steve Hughes, and today I'm doing a presentation on how to make media for the world's first widely available virtual reality device. Yes, I'm talking about the Holmes stereoscope. It was invented in 1859 by Oliver Wendell Holmes and was a very affordable alternative to the stereoscopes that had existed before. By the early 1900s, you could buy a stereoscope similar to this one in the Sears and Roebuck catalog for about 30 cents. Which would be the equivalent in today's dollars of, say, 20 bucks. The media that this uses is the stereocard, and a stereocard is simply a stereo photograph that has been printed and mounted on a firm piece of card. The interesting part about this is this viewer, which is about 110 years old, and this card, which is about 100 years old, maybe a little more, still work together perfectly. You don't even need to charge the batteries. What we're going to be doing today is showing you how to make media for this device that will work in viewers that were made anytime from 150 years ago to 30 minutes ago when I was making one for this presentation. I'm going to show you how to make a stereo card using only very simple tools that you probably already have laying around the house, and that if you don't, you can buy at any large store anywhere, basically. The items we're going to need are a glue stick for gluing the print down, a knife for doing a lot of cutting and trimming on the stereo card, and a ruler, a metal ruler, preferably with a cork or rubber backing so that it won't slip when we're cutting with it. You can buy all of these things at our local Walmart, which is a convenient 20 miles away, for about $6. You should be able to find the items you need to do this with almost anywhere. Now, if you notice, there's one thing I did not mention you're needing, and that's a 3D camera. What we're going to do to take our 3D photograph is use something called the cha-cha method. And it is a technique that can be used to take a 3D photograph with almost any camera. 3D cameras are very nice. They have the two lenses, and when you press the shutter, you get two photographs taken at exactly the same time. The problem with them is very simple. They're relatively expensive and fairly hard to find, so if you're just starting with 3D or want to tinker with it, it's probably too much of an investment. Instead, we're going to use the most commonly available camera in the American home today, the cell phone. Now, the way a cha-cha shot works, you notice the 3D camera had two lenses, one for the left and one for the right. And what we're going to do is hold the camera up, take a photograph, move it a small distance, and take another photograph. So we have done basically the same thing the 3D camera did of taking a left and a right view. We've just done them sequentially instead of at the same time. This sounds like an extremely easy way to take a 3D picture, so you're probably wondering why everybody doesn't do it. The reason they don't is it's quite complex. When you take your photo, you have to move the camera horizontally only, a specific distance, and if you do anything else, like tilt it forward, tilt it back, tilt it sideways, raise it or lower it, the image won't work. The photograph probably won't be usable. Even worse, if anything moves in the photograph itself, like a leaf, a blade of grass, clouds in the background, anything like that, you can't use the photograph anyway. Now, what we're going to do to get around a bunch of those problems is first we're going to be doing a still life, and we're going to use this little vase of artificial flowers as our subject. We still have all the problems of holding the camera steady, but we have a way around that. We are going to take a Kleenex box. You can use anything you cure that you've got laying around the house. And we're going to take our metal ruler, and we are going to tape it to the Kleenex box so that it can't move. Okay? Now we can set our phone up on our ruler and guarantee that it only moves horizontally, and we can use the ruler to measure how far it moves. There's one more problem we have to address though. 3D cameras are quite sensitive to the distance between the subject and the camera lens. So when we place our cell phone camera here, we need our object to be a specific distance away from the camera in order for the 3D to work properly. The calculations for doing that become fairly complex, but there's a simple little rule you can use called the 1/30th rule. And that says that if the distance between your object is at least 30 times the lens spacing. So we're going to move our camera 1 inch, which simulates having a 3D camera with a 1 inch lens separation. That means we want our object to be 30 inches away from the camera. Now we're going to achieve that by taking a yardstick and simply measuring the distance and adjusting it until we have it exactly 30 inches away from our cell phone. Now that we've got our rig for making the shot, we've got our object, let's proceed to actually taking the cha-cha shot itself. Place your cell phone with one edge of the screen exactly on the 3-inch mark, hold it vertically, and take your image. Then move back to the 4-inch mark exactly, hold it vertically, and take the second image. Now we're done. Okay, we've just taken our photo using the cha-cha method, and now we're ready to actually process it into a stereo pair. The first thing you're going to ask is, how do you get it off of the phone and into your PC? Well, the easiest way to do that for a couple of images is to open your email app, address an email to yourself, attach the 2 images to it, and then send it to yourself. From here we're going to go on and process the image on the PC. Computer, please open a virtual PC screen with Stereo Photo Maker running. Okay, now we have the 2 images that we took using our cha-cha method in our PC. We are going to use a program called Stereo Photo Maker to continue processing them. If you don't have this program installed on your PC, you can find instructions for doing so on the convention website. The first thing we want to do is go up and click on the double file open icon. We click on the left image first and say open, and then click on the right image and say open. This should give us a display that shows both of our images at the same time. The first thing we're going to do is come up and run a routine to try to correct any problems that they might have. Click on Adjust, and then come down and click on Auto Alignment. The program will just take a few seconds to run, and what it's doing is looking at both images and comparing them to each other. If it sees problems, like one being slightly rotated in one direction or a little too large or something like that, it will actually fix them for you. You want to look at these 2 columns of numbers. If any of the readings in it are larger than 2.0, you might have a problem with your image and you might want to consider reshooting it. Stereo Photo Maker can fix a lot of problems with images, but you pay a price for that. The quality suffers as Stereo Photo Maker does more work for you. Now let's close the image and come up and crop it. Click on the down arrow in the crop icon and click on Free Cropping Options. Check the Keep Aspect Ratio box and click on the Classic Stereo Card box. This gives us an aspect ratio of 21 to 23, which is what we want. Click OK. Now we have the crop icon up on the screen. Hold the left mouse button down and draw a box that completely encompasses the image. Try not to have too much of the foreground image inside of it. Release the mouse button and you'll see the box on the screen. Place your cursor in it, press on the left mouse button, and then move the box around till it's more or less centered in the box, and again that it doesn't show too much of the foreground. When you let go, it will automatically crop the image. Come up and click on the side-by-side icon to restore it to full size on the screen. At this point, we need to check what our image looks like. Put the cursor over the gray anaglyph icon and click on it. Now you've got a nice anaglyph picture of your 3D object. Look at it through the 3D glasses that came with your souvenir pack for the convention, or any other pair you happen to have laying around, and see if you like it. If you don't like the way it was cropped, at this point you can come up and click on the Undo button and go back and try again. If it looks okay to you, then we're ready to move on. If you have a real qualm about what it looks like and don't think it's just not right, there's a good chance you have reversed the images. Press the X button on the keyboard and see what it looks like then. As you can see here, if you're looking at this with your 3D glasses, it's distinctly wrong. Press the X button again and we have the right image. Let's move it back into side-by-side mode, and then go up and click on File, and come down and click on Print Stereo Card. A dialog box opens with a lot of options to it, and we're going to change a bunch of them. First, we don't want to create a classic stereo card, so we want to click on Home 6x4. This makes it look more like a 4x6 print in the preview box. Then come down and highlight these 2 bottom lines of text
and delete them. If we leave them there, they're going to get in the way when we make our finished card. The title line you can either delete or leave the way it is, or add something meaningful to you. It won't show up in the finished print, so it really doesn't matter. The next thing is that this has an arched top on each of the images, which is similar to old-fashioned stereo cards. I don't happen to think that's appropriate for modern cards, so let's click on the Arch button to undo it under Frame Style. I do like having the corners of the image rounded, so let's click on the Round Rectangular button to round the edges of the photograph. At this point, it's looking pretty decent, except for the minor fact that it has a cyan background and we have a red and pink object in the foreground. Not exactly the best combination. Come down to Background Color, click on Select, and then go up and click on the white box, come down and click OK. It looks a lot better with a white background. The last thing we need to do is click on Canvas Size. If you're printing this on your own printer, it needs to be whatever size paper you're printing on. But if you're taking it out in the world to be printed, it needs to be 6 by 4. Now it's back looking like a 4 by 6 print like we expected. Finally, let's click on the Save As button. We have to change the name because the one that it brings up automatically won't actually work. And I'm going to call this Final. And then come down and move this slider bar all the way to the right to get the very best quality image we can, and click on Save. There, we've just created a file that we can take to almost any processor or upload to their website and have a 4 by 6 print made. As soon as we've done that, we can continue with this presentation. Computer, please close the virtual PC.
Okay, we've processed our photo in Stereo Photo Maker, and we've sent it off to somebody to have it processed, which in my case would be driving it over to the local Walmart. So now we have a nice little envelope like this, probably, and inside it we have some prints that look like this. It's actually a pretty nice stereo pair, and you can see it quite well in several viewers, including the lorgnette viewer that was included with your souvenir pack when you registered for the convention. What we want to make, however, is a stereo card, and the emphasis there is on the word card. In order for it to be a proper stereo card, it needs to be cardboard, and it needs to be strong enough that you can set it in the viewer without its buckling or waving around, which by the way means that poster boards simply will not work. It also needs to be thin enough that it will fit between the edges of this guy. There are a lot of options out there that you can use. 2-ply mat board is a very good choice, but it's a little hard to find. 4-ply mat board will work just fine, but it's really hard to cut. This is something that I've used and had a lot of luck with. It's the backer boards for comic books. Walmart used to sell these in convenient packages of 25, but they no longer do. You can buy it on Amazon, but the problem there is you're buying it in the very convenient 100 pack. If you find that you can't find something like this, there's a really good alternative, though you might not have thought about it. Find a pad of paper. On the back of it, there's almost certainly a piece of cardboard that is perfectly suitable for making stereo cards. Now let's proceed on to making the actual card itself.
Okay, now we're going to make the physical stereo card. We're going to start out by taking our backing board and cutting out a piece of it that is 7 inches by 4 1/4. Now we've sort of lucked out, and this particular board is already 7 inches wide, so we don't have to make that cut. We do have to make the 4 1/4 inch cuts. So come down here, come across to 4 1/4, and make a mark. Now I'm using a Sharpie to do this, which I do not recommend doing if you're really making cards because they tend to bleed through, but it makes it easy for you guys to see what I'm doing in the video. We've got our 2 marks. Now we're going to cut it. The ruler has a nice cork back on it, which means it won't slide around much, which is very convenient. So we're going to come down to our marks and line the ruler up very carefully. And then, using our hobby knife, which is never to be called an X-Acto knife unless it was made by the people who own the trademark, make 2 or 3 relatively light, smooth cuts, which will give you a nice clean edge on your cardboard. The next thing we need to do with it is we want to make a mark exactly 1/2 of an inch, as close as you can get it, from one edge of the cardboard. So right there. We're going to use a pencil for this, nothing else, and make as small a mark as you can clearly see. This is the mark we're going to use to line up the photo print when we paste it down. Now we take this card and we put it aside. Take a clean sheet of paper, lay it down on our cutting board, and now take our photo print and bring it over. Make sure that the bottom of the print is down. Then take the ruler and make a mark 3 1/2 inches from the bottom, 3 1/2 inches. Come over and mark the other side at 3 1/2 inches and do a good job on this if you can. In the real world, if you used a Sharpie to do what I'm doing right now, you would create a mark that would cause problems later, so use a pencil. I'm doing this so it's easy for you to see it. Okay, now the line we've just drawn is to tell us what part of this print we need to glue up. We're only going to put glue on the bottom part. The kind of glue that you use is important and can make a big difference in your outcome. This is an Elmer's Craft Bond glue stick, and it is specially designed for things like photographs and will work very well. This is a photo glue stick, which is exclusively for use with photographs, and it will work excellently, but it's a little expensive. What we're going to use is neither one of those nice products, but instead a 25-cent Elmer's School glue stick, and we're going to use it because it's purple. And being purple, I can show you exactly where I'm putting glue. Now, the important thing here is not to let the glue get over the edge of the photograph. If the glue gets over the edge of the photograph, it's going to make a mess when we try to glue it down. And when we put pressure on it to set the print, it's probably going to ooze out and make an even bigger mess. So try not to get any glue over the edge. Instead, go close to the edge, as close as you reasonably can without going over. Now the top line, we want to go over the top line so that we have glue on both sides of it. Draw a nice big X in the middle. Put a little other glue where you feel like it. And then pick it up by the unglued part, like this. Take the card that we've already made and cut, and remember the little mark we made. Put this print down to where it just barely covers the little mark, and lines up perfectly with the bottom, and hold it with your finger. Now line the other one up perfectly with the bottom, and hold that with your finger. Take a clean sheet of paper and lay it down on top of it, and without letting go of these two sides, start rubbing down on it. If you let go of these two sides, the print is probably going to move and be out of alignment. Okay, so rub it down thoroughly. It will take this anywhere from 30 seconds to an hour and a half to actually glue. Obviously, we're not going to sit here and chat for that length of time, so I'm going to swap it for one that's had an hour to set and dry. Take the print, make sure the piece of paper is still clean, lay it down on top of it, again making sure this is the bottom. Then we're going to make a mark exactly as close as we can get it, 3 1/2 inches from the bottom of the print. Come over here and make another mark as close as we can to 3 1/2 inches from the bottom of the print. Now, still keeping it down on our clean paper, lay the ruler down and line those marks up. Cut it. Again, using firm but soft but even strokes. Don't put too much force behind them or you'll tear the paper and it'll be messy. Make as many cuts as it takes until this pops off. When you've done that, voila, we have a stereo card. The only other thing we can do to improve it is to corner round it, which adds a little bit of a finishing look to it, and this is using a corner rounder punch, which is available in almost any craft store in the scrapbooking section. Just go around
and do each of the corners. And we have a very pretty finished card that nobody would be ashamed of. And we did it very simply. One word of caution is the glue doesn't necessarily stick as well as you think, so putting these things under a weight like a couple of heavy books or something is a good idea. The other thing you really want to do is turn the card over and take some writing implement and sign it, date it, and maybe even name it. Now, my handwriting is so bad I won't bother. So that future collectors, people like me who collect contemporary cards, will know who made the card and what it was about. Well, we've just finished making a proper stereo card, and it looks very nice when you look at it. Now, our goal was to make something that would work in home-style viewers that have been around any time in the last 150 years, so we need to test the card and see if it really works. This is a 110-year-old viewer. The card fits into it nicely, and the stereo image looks good. On the other hand, we can take this beautiful Allen Lewis Saturn scope viewer, which is relatively modern. The card fits in it, and yes, there's a beautiful stereo image there. Finally, we have the Owl Light viewer that was included with your souvenir packet for the convention, and is a very recent manufacture. And gee, it works pretty well with it too, so I think we succeeded. While we're talking about cards, the card we made is very simple. It has just basically the image, but modern stereo cards are almost as much about the card as they are about the image itself. This is a modern stereo card. It has a nice image on the front that covers the whole of the front. It has a well-designed back with informative data on it, and it's made out of 2-ply cardstock, which makes it very rigid, and everything involved in it is archival quality. This card could easily last for the same amount of time as this card, which is to say somewhere well over 100 years. So it's something you need to consider if you'd like to play around with something that people might be seeing a long time from now. In this presentation, I have just flown over a lot of details that you're going to find yourself wondering about. There are some printed instructions that go along with this presentation on the convention website that go into much greater detail about some of these subjects. So if you're serious about them, go look them up. There are also endless other people who have made presentations on how to make stereo cards, and if you search for stereo card, you'll find a lot of them on YouTube. Anyway, thank you very much for coming to my presentation, and I hope that if it was not entertaining, at least it was a little bit informative. Thank you.